Welcome to Knee of the Curve. I'm your host, Emmett Short. This show is about futurism, it's news, and no, YouTube, it's not made for kids. Don't get left in the past. Hit subscribe to stay up to date on how wet Mars is for you. On today's show, I'll be speaking with the one and only Tim Dodd, the everyday astronaut, is on the program, so make sure you stick around for that. Let's get into today's main story, Mars. It could have had life in the past, and it's very possible it's got life right now buried somewhere deep inside. It's like a planetary version of Melania Trump, except people care about Mars. At least a lot of people do. A recent Gallup poll shows for the first time in history, a majority of Americans are in favor of human missions to Mars. NASA's going, Elon's going, Jeff Bezos is going, but probably only because Elon's going. Mark Zuckerberg doesn't have plans to go to Mars or to ever, let's face it, be cool. Nah, he's given up. But this growing enthusiasm has got some people pissed off.
Shut up about Mars.
There's no air on Mars. There's no atmosphere. It's cold.
If we're going to spend the time, effort, and money to make an entire planet sustainable for human life, why not the one that already has air and water? I don't want to be a multi-planet species. Fuck Mars. It's time to make Earth great again.
I refuse to do this stupid okay boomer joke because besides being too easy, it's rude, and ageism is something I don't want thrown in my face one day. But is it nicer at this point than calling him an idiot? Plus, Bill Maher is not an idiot, and I'm not just saying that in hopes that I can, get on his show before he dies. That's how you do ageism. That's how you age discriminate, okay, Gen Z? You f***ing kids. Now I'm just attacking both sides. Okay, but for real, I am a true fan, so I was not happy to hear Bill's flimsy-ass arguments about how enthusiasm for manned missions to Mars are somehow adding to the climate crisis.
This is a dangerous idea that our culture is already too taken with, that we can keep on trashing Earth because we got Mars. Movies, TV shows, magazines, and this constant drumbeat to get to Mars, explore Mars, colonize Mars. To paraphrase Jan Brady, Martians, Martians, Martians.
What? That joke made me want to burn fossil fuels. That joke, I wish I was on Mars. No spacesuit. That joke was literally as old as Apollo 11. There are footprints on the moon fresher than that joke. That joke didn't age well 30 years ago. Anyone else want to smoke cigarettes and oppress women after that joke? Okay. Someone got paid for that joke, and I'm on YouTube. If that's how bad Bill's writers are, I can see why he's got such a low opinion of America's potential.
America can't maintain our infrastructure, can't update our power grid, we can't get off oil, can't even secure our elections. And we're going to fly 35 million miles to Mars? Have you looked at our math scores? Forget the launch, we couldn't even do the countdown.
Now that's a great joke. Solid writing. They do knock it out of the park sometimes. He does good work. Like I said, I'm a fan, but his point is what? America sucks and we can't do Mars? Yeah, not with that attitude. Come on, Bill. Now you just sound like NASA. Oh, that's right. I said it. Of the three most prominent plans to get humans to Mars, NASA's not only takes the longest, it's by far the most expensive.
Even Donald Trump, who isn't a real billionaire but plays one on TV, favors Mars over Earth. His budget slashes the EPA, but last month he signed a bill calling for a manned mission to Mars by 2033, which NASA estimates would cost $450 billion.
450 billion. Okay, I get it. That money could lead to a lot of climate-saving innovation. That money's got my wheels spinning right now. Like, how about since cow burps make up about 9% of greenhouse gases and we're already putting cows in VR goggles, yeah, that's right, that's a thing. How about we make an entire mask, we capture those methane burps, we could stop global warming and have a new source of gas for the grill. Or what if we use that money to build a ton of skyscraper-sized CO2 scrubbers? Or what if we just gave it all to the automakers and said, here, starting right now, no more gas cars. Figure it out. Yeah, Those ideas might seem crazy, but no crazier than spending $450 billion on kind of not really getting to Mars. Even Trump, after he signed the bill, was like, wait, why can't we go straight there?
What would you say?
Frankly, I've been a little disappointed the last 10, 15 years.
How do you feel about it?
Mars Direct.
You like it direct?
Yes.
It seems to me Mars Direct.
You're impatient.
I mean, who knows better than these people? I mean, you know, they've been doing this stuff for a long time. What about the concept of Mars Direct?
This is great because Trump has already signed the bill like 2 years ago. It's a fiasco. Elon agrees, tweeting, "This bill changes almost nothing about what NASA is doing. Existing programs stay in place and there's no added funding for Mars." He then called Saturn V a pansy mobile and posted a nutscape of Starship. Okay, no, he didn't do that, but that seems like something Elon would do. I bet you there's a photo like that in his phone. When Trump saw the tweet, he apparently tried to fire Elon because of course Trump thinks Elon works at NASA.
Before me are some rocket ships. You haven't seen that for this country in a long time. NASA's making tremendous strides. We're really at the forefront. Nobody's doing what we're doing. I don't know if you saw last with Elon with the rocket boosters where they're coming back down.
Nobody's doing things like we're doing, like what Elon did, sort of on his thing, but you know, he's not us, but you know, he's us. No, Trump, he's not you. That was not NASA. Anyway, the point is, I get why Bill Maher's upset. Trump signed a lot of money over to Mars that could be used for earthly things, and honestly, he's not wrong, but the thing about Mars attacks, is I agree, like a lot of things Bill Maher does, I agree with his philosophy, but not with his tactics. Like how he constantly says Trump won't leave office if he loses the election. Nobody was thinking that. But now you keep droning on about it and people are becoming used to the idea. You're laying his groundwork for him. Donald Trump might try and fuck us, but Bill, you don't have to be the lube. Keep it to yourself. I mean, do you really think these enthusiasts are into it because they don't care about trashing Earth? Because that's not a thing. Are you thinking of NASCAR? Who do you think likes this message, Bill? Dude, you're preaching to the flat earthers. And they already don't want to go to a flat Mars. They couldn't afford it anyway because they don't have a lot of money. Because they're stupid. Because Mars enthusiasts are engineers, chemists, geologists. They write software. They're the people who create the things that make our world futuristic. The Apollo era space program generated more household tech than I can list here, but it includes CT scans, satellite TV, GPS temper foam, fiber optics, and LED lights. One of those is not right, but you don't know. Tweet your guesses at me and I'll send one lucky person a knee of the curve mug. Look. Cool. Mug. I mean, I could probably tell you capitalism itself is still a thing because of Apollo, and you might believe me. And you should, because it's totally true. According to The Economist, beating Russia to the moon proved to the world the power of the free market system. So it stands to reason the tech needed for Mars missions will have a similar impact. Robotics, food production, national defense, hell, planetary defense. We don't have a clue when an asteroid could threaten our very existence, and we need a thriving space industry in place when that day comes. But the biggest earthly benefit that could come from missions to Mars is to our global psychology.
There are so many things to worry about, so many things to be concerned about. There are many troubles in the world, of course, and these are important and we need to solve them. But we also need things that make us excited to be alive, that make us glad to wake up in the morning and be fired up about the future and think, yeah, the future's going to be great. You know, and this space exploration is one of those things. And becoming a spacefaring civilization, being out there among the stars, this is one of the things that I know makes me glad to be alive. I think it makes many people glad to be alive. It's one of the best things. And there's really, we're faced with a choice. Which future do you want? Do you want the future where we become a spacefaring civilization and are in many worlds and are out there among the stars, or one where we are forever confined to Earth? And I say it is the first. And I hope you agree with me. Yeah.
How can you not be inspired by that? Bill, your position on Mars is the opposite of inspiring. And it's also an incredibly conservative position for a so-called progressive. Bill, Mars enthusiasts are fans of SpaceX and Elon Musk, whose mission with Tesla is not just to sell cars, but to create a carbon-neutral transportation system and energy grid. The people you're attacking are the tree-huggiest people on the planet. You're attacking the very things that are trying to help you the most. You're attacking yourself, essentially. You know what else does that? Cancer. Hey, Bill Maher, stop acting like cancer. Okay, it's time for the interview. My guest is a regular guy who's turned his passion for space into a wildly successful YouTube channel that inspires and educates us all on rocket science and space flight, and has even gotten him an interview with Elon Musk. Joining us now via Skype, please welcome the everyday astronaut, Tim Dodd is with us. Tim, welcome to the show. Thanks for doing this.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yes. You have the distinct honor of actually being the first interviewee for Knee the Curve. So thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
So I follow your work, and I find it like inspiring that you are a wedding photographer turned space flight enthusiast turned full-time science communicator.
Yeah.
Which is what it said on your wiki.
That's true. That's true. Wikipedia can't be wrong, right?
What was that transition like?
Oh man, now that's been just, I don't know. I'm one of those people that when something like inspires me, I just can't help but pursue it. You know, that's how I learned photography. That's how I learned. Growing up, I worked on cars and motorcycles and was just a self-taught mechanic because I just couldn't stop thinking about it. You know, and same with photography. And when I was growing up with drawing and all these things, I just was obsessed. And that's how spaceflight was. So it was just a matter of time before it took over everything, and I had to pursue it full time. And I guess that's just how life goes for me.
So your mission, according to this space.com article, is to generate excitement and interest in spaceflight. So why do you think that's important?
Well, all you have to do is look back at what happened during the Apollo era to see what kind of an impact that can have, not just, to the nations working on space programs, but to actually inspire the world, Literally, basically anyone that was within eyeshot of a television was watching humans step foot on the moon. And everyone that watched that, it totally took us out of where we are. If you, let's say you're not in a very good situation and, you're growing up in a country where you don't have a lot of opportunities, all of a sudden you're watching someone walk on the moon. Like, what's that going to do to you, to inspire you to be like, what can I do to make something like this? What impact can I have? And of course, the number one thing you're probably going to strive for is education. When people appreciate spaceflight and when they understand that is still kind of one of the hardest things, basically that, and of course they say like, it's not rocket science or it's not brain surgery. Those are kind of the two things that people divert to. And there's a reason, because it is pushing the envelope. It's doing things that are nearly impossible and finding solutions. And spaceflight just really brings out the best in humanity and brings out the best in education and brings out the best in expanding our actual physical borders as us as a species. So I just think that it's absolutely beautiful.
So who do you think is going to get to Mars first, NASA or the obvious Richard Branson?
Richard Branson. So, assuming we're actually keeping all options open, I think Mars is a big, big, dirty old place that's scary and far away and hard to get to. I could really see it being, it's going to be a very big collaborative effort. I don't think SpaceX is going to go rogue and land on Mars entirely without any sanctioned help and advice and communication and all the stuff from NASA. If it's not, it will likely be NASA and other international partner astronauts, but it very well might be on a SpaceX rocket. That's my opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, NASA's budget is $450 billion versus how much do you think Elon will end up spending?
I mean, SpaceX is very inexpensive in the grand scheme of rocketry. They're doing some things that are very different. But the thing that people need to remember, because when NASA says it might take $450 billion, and people, the argument can be, why not spend that here on Earth? Well, where do you think that money is being spent? Do you think that money is being thrown at Mars? Are we dropping off of pallets of $450 billion of cash and burning it on the surface of Mars? No, that money goes here, goes to high-paying jobs and creates more and more infrastructure for us here. And it creates, again, more need for higher education and actually gives those people that are out there trying to get college degrees that can't find a job, oh, guess what? They're going to be working on putting people on Mars. And that money and that economy starts wherever, starts from having an ambitious mission like going to Mars. So, big price tag, not a concern.
Who do you think's doing more for humanity, Elon or Bill Gates?
That's a pointed question, because I think they're both doing sincerely huge things for humanity, but in very, very different ways. Philanthropy for Bill Gates is pretty well unmatched, at least at this point, at least as far as dollar amount, just because, when you're that rich, I mean, and you donate half of your money eventually. So I think in general, Bill Gates is doing some incredible things, but what he does is pretty, it is actually fairly narrow scope, I think, compared to the things Elon's working on is literally like writing history right now. We are watching, the transition to sustainable energy. Perfect example for right now is the 2012 Model S that came out, what is that, almost 8 years ago now, is still was cheaper and outperforms, except for 0 to 60, but in all other metrics as far as range and everything, outperforms the 2020 Porsche that costs $180,000, the Taycan. And it's like, that car is amazing. That car is great. And we should be applauding other companies working on this stuff, but it's only because Tesla set this unbelievably high benchmark in EVs and sustainability that other car manufacturers are just now starting to even try and compete. And even with, billions of dollars invested, they're still falling short compared to, the benchmark that Tesla set. And the same thing is happening in the aerospace industry, where it was considered 4 years ago, almost to the day. In 4 days, it'll be the 4-year anniversary of SpaceX landing their first rocket. And before that moment, doing what they were doing was considered impossible. And there's so many people that were saying, okay, great, they landed one, but they'll never refly them. This is just a pipe dream. This is pointless. They're wasting so much money and resources trying to land and reuse rockets. And look at them now. They've already landed and reflown more rockets than they've built. So, I mean, it's just totally, they've flipped the script. They've changed it all. And people just might not understand those implications.
Why do you think people are not as excited about, or there's not that same level of fanboyhood for climate science than there is for space?
Yeah, that's a big one that we got a long ways to go, and those things actually do intermix and tie pretty well though, as far as the science goes. If we can figure out how to have humans live sustainably on Mars, just in those little edge cases, how do you have someone live on Mars? You're going to probably solve a lot of things about water purification. You're going to solve a lot of things about your actual food production, exactly, the air you breathe, arid land and turning it into, land that you can fertilize and actually grow things out of. There's a lot of technology that will actually spin off when you have literally the world's brightest people focusing on a really small, weird, niche situation that's considered impossible. A lot of that stuff ends up being like, oh, actually, this totally applies right here, in our daily lives. Why would we ever go to Antarctica, right? I mean, there's literally no reason, but we've learned a lot about the Earth in doing so. And actually, as far as climate change goes, we'll learn an unbelievable amount about the Earth if we observe other geologies and other climates of other planets. The wider our scope is, right now, everything we know about climate change is based basically on what we have to observe here and the data we have here on Earth. If we observe Venus more and realize why, how its greenhouse gas effect went totally, out of control, or if we observe Mars and we go and observe all these things, our data set just grows, and we have a much wider spectrum of how to pull that data and actually compare and align it to our own planet. And I know people get confused by that because they're like, well, you can't say, how climate change on Earth, look at Mars and figure that out. You actually can, because geology on Mars is the same as geology here on Earth. Atmospheric conditions on Mars, it's the same composition of things, just different ratios and vastly different quantities of those things. But the interactions are all the same. So the more we learn about how geology and how climate science and how everything works, physics works on other planets, the more we understand about our own. And even if it's, 10 crews of 5 people going to Mars at first, the amount of data that they bring back with them would be absolutely game-changing.
That is an excellent point. I hadn't thought of that specifically. And that, I think, is a great place to end. Tim, this was an amazing interview. These are super great insights. I saw your interview with Elon. I'd watched a few of your other videos. You go super in-depth to a lot of rocket science and really technical issues. So everybody go check out Everyday Astronaut. And Tim, thanks for doing this.
Thanks so much for having me, and I look forward to everything else you're working on.
Thank you, Tim. Tell me in the comments what percentage of the national budget do you think should go to NASA, or should we just give all that money to private industries like SpaceX? And do you think people like Musk and Bezos, what they're doing with their rocket companies, should be considered philanthropy? Let me know. If I made you laugh, or you learned a little something, or both, and you feel like supporting the show, I put together some merch on Teespring, and you can check out the description for links to Patreon, PayPal, crypto, or just share this with someone you think will like it. Huge thanks as always to my Patreon supporters. If you want technology news satire, think about joining these awesome people as a patron. Thanks again to my guest Tim Dodd. Definitely go subscribe to his channel. If you think you're funny and you want to get a joke on the show or help research for this series, hit me up on Twitter or join my Discord server. Link in description. Either way, we're living in the knee of the curve, so hit subscribe to stay up to date on how technology is changing everything. Thanks for watching. Peace.